and was just saying a bunch about pride and how proud she was of this team. Have you kind of had similar emotions the last couple of days, and how do you balance that with a very painful?
No one in the WNBA and NBA expected it. A player who questioned every shot she hit and quietly feared that today might be her discharge. Barely managed to secure a berth on the squad throughout her first 2 seasons. Then, fairly immediately, everything changed. In addition to going through the biggest metamorphosis in women's basketball history, Lexie Hull became one of its most compelling stories. And now, after living through the Caitlin Clark storm for years, she's finally spoken up about what it's been like. Not the polished media version, but the actual one. She shared something that nobody exactly expected to hear before any of this made sense. You also need to understand where Lexie Hull was before Caitlin Clark came into Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Hull was chosen by the Indiana Fever as the 6th overall choice in the 2022 draft. On paper, it sounds like a dream. 6th place overall. Top 10 possibilities. A Stanford alumna who had earned a national championship, 3 All-Pac-12 selections, and the Class and Elite 90 awards for her remarkable athletic and academic accomplishments in her senior season. This was supposed to be the beginning point. Instead, due of the bad sickness in those early years, it became a struggle that most outsiders never really noticed. Not quite as good. They were among the poorest clubs in the league because they had losing seasons and completely missed the playoffs. But Hull was obliged to battle continually to be on the squad. No young player wants to be in this circumstance. Every night mattered. Every item has a negative meaning. She was aware of her fearful behavior. She scored fewer than 5 points per game on average over her first 2 seasons. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 83% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already? Great. Thank you so much for your support. Now, back to the video. In her second season, she played more than 20 minutes every night. But she was only able to get 6 points. The figures are accurate. She was being held back by something. Later on, Hull would identify that thing precisely. Few athletes are ever willing to recount those early years in public, but she did. See what she said to Glamour magazine. There were occasions when I felt that if I didn't shoot, I may be benched or cut. Someone with exceptional credentials, a Stanford graduate, and a top 10 draft selection are all laying awake, really worried that one missed shot may kill their careers. That was the reality of being on a losing team with nothing to soothe the agony. Those early years were really nerve-wracking, she remarked. A losing culture, no playoffs, no margin for mistake. The stakes were too great to win. Everything was important as a result. Moreover, that kind of pressure has an effect on more than just your shot. It gets into your head. On the court, it alters your breathing, movement, and thought processes. However, something occurred that altered not just Lexie Hull's career, but also the franchise's whole course and even the state of American women's basketball in general. Hull was suffocating, and nobody outside was noticing the fever. In the 2024 WNBA draft, Caitlin Clark was chosen 1st overall by the Indiana Fever. Here's a brief synopsis of Caitlin Clark's persona at the time in case you need a refresher. The most decorated scorer in NCAA basketball history, regardless of gender. A player who single-handedly made Big Ten women's basketball a must-watch event, destroyed decades-old records, and transformed Iowa Hawkeyes games into sellouts and nationwide broadcast events. The WNBA as a whole was about to see if the frenzy around her, which had never been observed for a women's basketball player, was real. It was genuine. Her title as the league's most significant player was solidified by her record-breaking fan involvement and productivity throughout her debut campaign. Suddenly, the Indiana Fever became the most talked about, controversial, and highly acclaimed team in the WNBA. There were sold-out audiences, national broadcasts, and a media frenzy everywhere they went. Lexie Hull noticed Caitlin Clark wearing the Indiana Fever jersey. The impact Caitlin Clark has had on her coworkers is rarely discussed. Beyond visibility, there were other considerations. There were other causes besides larger crowds, sponsorship deals, and the cameras that followed them. According to Lexie Hull, the main distinction is what takes place inside the lines during a game. Something that, unless you know what you're searching for, is practically invisible. Compared to nearly everyone who has ever played this game, Caitlin Clark has a unique perspective on the floor. She has a fantastic idea for the court. She has a distinct depth. Her ability to draw defenders inspires coaches as well. Unobstructed perimeter shooters. It was nothing short of freeing for someone like Lexie Hull, who had tormented herself over every shot attempt for 2 years. When you consider what preceded the transition, Hull's portrayal of it acquires new meaning. I know I'm going to get open shots, but I don't need to be worried about whether they go in or they don't because I've put in the work to set myself up for this, and I'll live with the outcome, she confidently stated after Clark arrived. The figures demonstrated the kind of freedom that can only be attained when the pressure valve is eventually opened. In 2024, Hull's three-point shooting percentage was 47%. 1%. It was a lifetime best and one of the finest shooting efforts in the league that year. As a result of those looks, her three-point percentage fell back to 36.7%, exactly where it had been in college prior to Clark's death. Even better than the words, the figures convey the story. However, the court wasn't the only location where things shifted. At this point, the plot becomes considerably more intriguing. This is because Lexie Hull and Caitlin Clark's off-court connection sparked controversy, attracted media attention, and became one of the most talked-about subjects in women's sports. Many were really worried about Clark's adjustment to a locker room full of strangers when she was chosen. She had performed with her childhood co-workers, Gabby Marshall and Kate Martin, during her 4 years at Iowa. In a room where everyone else had already made connections, she was the brand's new face when she got to Indiana. The worry was genuine. Would she be a good fit? Would the current players welcome her, or would her attention offend them? This is what actually took place. She and Lexie Hull fell in love almost instantly. They were hanging out off the court in Indianapolis at the end of that first season. They were laughing like if they had been friends for years, experimenting with different cocktails, and posting on TikTok together. During the Olympic break, the WNBA visited Mexico. Fans loved the connection, which was undeniable. But by 2025, the dynamic had grown to such an extent that it had a completely different name. What had been a duet became a trio in the off-season before to the 2025 season as Sophie Cunningham was transferred to Indiana. The three of them, Clark, Hull, and Cunningham, began referring to themselves as the Tracelatches, and their joint efforts produced some of the league's most popular and funny content. Clark's well-known caddies at an LPGA Pro-Am event were Hull and Cunningham. They were always making fun of each other on social media. Clark may also benefit from some sun exposure, Hull quipped to People magazine in one of the most hilarious remarks of the off-season. Hull made light of Clark's lack of sun exposure when he shared pictures from Fever Media Day on Instagram with the message, "We are so back." It was the kind of taunting that only occurs in friendships when both parties are genuinely at ease with one another. Additionally, it provided the WNBA fanbase with a first-hand peek at the players' personalities. Hull stated that Clark will attend her wedding, which has been scheduled since Hull and Pittsburgh Pirates outfielder Will Matson got engaged in April 2025. Before being selected in the 6th round of the 2019 MLB draft, Matson was a standout baseball player at Stanford, where the two first crossed paths. He moved to Indianapolis to be with Hull after retiring from baseball due to a string of ailments, which speaks much about the foundation of her life. Even if everything has been friendly and happy, Hull made the decision to confront a side of playing with Caitlin Clark in a way that most people in her position would have ignored or completely avoided. And it's the aspect of this tale that merits the greatest focus. 2025 was one of the WNBA's most tumultuous seasons ever. Hull characterized Clark's arrival as having a specific demeanor, a seriousness, a focus, and an edge that implied she had completed her adjustment and was prepared to rule. How Hull informed reporters prior to the season that Clark's second year was clearly different. It's obvious that she's here and prepared to conduct business, according to Hull. And that read appeared to be perfect at first. Hull was playing the best basketball of her career through the first 7 games of 2025, leading the WNBA in three-point percentage at 55 and scoring more than 10 points per game. 6%. The Fever appeared to be a cohesive team at last. The wounds then began. Clark missed a lot of games due to his quad problem. Then there was a groin problem. There was then another soft tissue issue. One of the most devastating pictures of the season was taken on July 15th, when Clark suffered his 4th injury in just a few months during a game against the Connecticut Sun. After giving it her best and witnessing everything go apart, Clark appeared to be suppressing her tears as she left the floor, rested her forehead on the basket structure, and sat on the bench with a towel covering her face. And Lexie Hull was sitting next to her, just as a true friend would when words fail to convey their emotions. Hull later discussed Clark's leadership position at the time in an honest manner. "Why me?" questions. She was irritated that her body would not comply, even though she was working harder than anybody else in the building. It was a challenging chapter. The Fever won despite Clark missing a large portion of the season. They persevered all the way to the WNBA semifinals, where they defeated the eventual champion Las Vegas Aces in a crucial Game 5 that required overtime prior to Indiana's final defeat. Hull's two-way persistence, which isn't evident in a box score, was a major factor in the run. Taking command, defending the top perimeter scorer on the opposing team every night, and making plays that kept games close when the team needed them. She continued to consider a topic that she ultimately concluded the general public should be aware of. Lexie Hull decided to quit being cautious with her remarks after the October 2025 Women of the Year feature in a beauty magazine. Along with Nalissa Collier-Jones and the Sabali sisters, she was one of 5 musicians highlighted in Music. For someone who had quietly established himself as one of the league's most regarded players, this distinction was fitting. However, her engagement, attire, or basketball statistics are unrelated to the parts of that interview that went viral online. Hull made it clear that it focused on the disadvantages of facing the most well-known female athlete. "I think there is some envy over the Fever because of the media exposure and the people who have stood beside us since Caitlin came. On its own, that would have been sufficient to generate headlines. But then she went beyond. She claimed that the Fever have heard what other teams have to say, as opposed to conjecture or outside hearsay. Hull said they've heard players and teams in other locker rooms stating they can't let the Fever win. The Target song is authentic. It's true that every team puts forth extra effort when they play Indiana. And Hull has been at the heart of it ever since Clark arrived. What she decided to do with that is what makes her reaction to all of it so intriguing. She made no complaints. She didn't behave in a victimized manner. She leaned in and played some music. It's okay if something outside of our control gives you more desire to defeat us." Hull observed. "Great if that's what it takes for you guys to come and put in extra effort. Everyone ought to believe that they are receiving the best from everyone else. We do, in my opinion, get everyone else's best." Being at the center of one of the most contentious situations in women's sports is handled in a remarkably calm manner. Yes, because Caitlin Clark attracts attention from sources other than fans, cameras, and sponsorship deals. It covers opponents who designate all of Indiana's games as postseason contests. Included are referees under a microscope. Every action committed by a Fever player is analyzed, recorded, argued, and weaponized by those who have never attended a professional basketball arena. And Lexie Hull has spent the last 2 years living in all of it. She has seen it directly in a way that no outsider could. And she stated her truth with a clarity that cuts through the cacophony when she eventually made the decision to do so. When you see the overall trajectory of what Lexie Hull has gone through, there is something worth pausing on. Additionally, she entered the league as a good player on a terrible team, enduring seasons in which every shot seemed to have life or death ramifications. Her self-assurance was destroyed. It was unclear what her role was. She had little influence over the franchise she had based her career on, and it was in freefall. Then everything changed when the most disruptive force in women's basketball history appeared. The supporters, the culture, the team's trajectory, and even Hull's image of himself as a player. And instead of becoming overtaken by it all or disappearing into the background, she became a pivotal figure in the WNBA's most intriguing story. Thanks to the friendship, the social media moments, the in-court collaboration, the moving sideline scenes, and the open glamour interview, Lexie Hull has transformed into someone she was never during those challenging early years. A household name. Her ability to shoot three-pointers made her dangerous. Her defense made her essential. However, her determination to be open about what it meant to be in Caitlin Clark's world made her legitimately interesting to those who follow this league regularly. The question that currently hangs over everything is what will happen next. Hull began the offseason as a restricted free agent for the first time in her career, which changes the equation in ways that even she said she couldn't fully predict. She has made a life for herself in Indianapolis. Her fiancé relocated to be close to her. She has conveyed her affection for Indiana overall, the series, and the fans. But in the business world of professional sports, sentiment isn't always crucial. Furthermore, no one in the league is currently able to adequately navigate the additional layers of uncertainty generated by the WNBA's collective bargaining position. The Fever is able to match any offer that is made to her. Additionally, given what she contributed in 2025, it is expected that Indiana will do whatever it takes to keep her. Caitlin Clark posted a photo of the two of them on Instagram with the caption, "Please share your thoughts in the comments section, subscribe, and enable all notifications so you don't miss anything. We'll see you in the next one after you click the video on the screen." I understand. Please share your thoughts in the comments section, subscribe, and enable all notifications so you don't miss anything. We'll see you in the next one after you click the video on the screen.